Let's take a look at the crisis in the state and local governments across the United States since 2008, because it's a serious crisis affecting us all. Here's the problem. Because of the collapse of our economy, because of the soaring number of unemployed people and foreclosed homes and poor wages and lost benefits, what is happening to every state and every city in America is that it is suffering a drop in its tax revenue. Unemployed people don't earn money to pay taxes on. Unemployed families do not spend the money they're not earning, and therefore they pay fewer sales taxes and so on. So everywhere state and local governments are facing reduced resources. They are not allowed by the United States law to borrow money for the regular activities of states and cities. So they're faced with a real crisis when their tax revenues go down, which happens when the capitalist system hits this kind of crisis. Now here's an irony to think about. When people are unemployed in huge numbers, when homes and neighborhoods are ravaged by foreclosure, that's when people need more from the local government, more help, more support, more time and energy of public employees to see us through a difficult time. Yet just when we need state and local government more, they are receiving less tax money and therefore have less resources. What can they do? What have they been doing? Across America, leaders of cities and states have been torn apart by this situation. Rising needs, dropping resources. They thought, perhaps for a short time, maybe they could tax people, but that makes no sense, they said, because if we tax the ordinary American citizen, that gives them even less money to spend, puts them in even worse condition, so even if we spend the money that we tax, it is offset by the fact they don't have that money to spend themselves. So that doesn't solve the problem. So what do? Well, if they're not going to tax, and if the monies they get from taxes people used to pay is dropping, here's what most of them do. They lay off public employees. Between 2007 and 2010, towards the end of 2010, 500,000 workers for city and state governments were fired. That's a stunning contribution to the growing unemployment. Not a solution, a contribution. And they also cut services. Of course, if you lay off all these people, those are that many services they can no longer provide. It is a crazy quality of our capitalist system to lay off public employees when we already have unemployment, to cut back services when an economic crisis means you need more of them. You need more teachers in schools where kids are upset because their families are unemployed. You need more mental health counseling because it's hard for people to go through unemployment, especially when it lasts as long as this one does. More needs, less resources. What in the world could be done to correct a system that works so badly? Here are two suggestions. One, across this country, we have a strange phenomenon. We have very wealthy, private, elite universities. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, you know the names. They have billions in assets, and guess what? They're not required to pay any taxes at all, ever. Not to the local town in which they're located, not to the state in which they're located, and not to the United States. They get all the benefits and all the services that these governments provide, but they don't pay for them. The people do. That's crazy. Those universities serve overwhelmingly the upper crust of the United States, the people most able to pay. They don't have to pay as high fees as they might have to, because these institutions don't pay any taxes. That's unjust, unfair, and it could be changed now, and that would make a significant contribution to many states, helping them to help people through a crisis, rather than make people go through the crisis without help while very wealthy institutions continue to avoid taxes. But here's an even better suggestion. 1% of America's people have assets of $1 million or more in stocks and bonds. They own property in stocks and bonds beyond what they own in their home and their car. Suppose we tax them for the first time. They pay no tax on the value of their stocks and bonds. They pay a tax on the income from them, but not on the value of the stocks and bonds. We ought to tax them. Just like we tax homes and cars, which is another kind of property, we ought to tax stocks and bonds, which is a kind of property. If we did, there are trillions and trillions of those, so a very small rate on the 1% of people who have $1 million or more than that would bring in the kind of money that would allow cities and states to provide the services we need without taxing us and without cutting us at a time when that is sheer cruelty. The crisis of our cities and states, which affects us all, could be overcome if we had the national courage to tax those who have escaped their fair share for far too long as it is.